highway to the danger zone, danger zone. Oh my god, hey, welcome back to my Stager YouTube channel. If you are seeing my face for the first time, my name is Mickey Joe and I am obsessed with all things theatre. And today I'm going to be talking to you about a play that I saw tonight in the West End at the Apollo Theatre. Yes, I was invited to go and see Cruise, the amazing one-man play written by Jack Holden. Cruise recalls the party scene of 1980s Soho and the impact on the gay community of the AIDS crisis at the time. I first saw this play last year at the Duchess Theatre when the West End was beginning to reopen post-COVID, but fully fledged shows weren't necessarily in a position to immediately come back. So the play that goes wrong at the Duchess Theatre was not in a position to reopen, so Cruise was able to reopen for this sort of intermittent period beforehand. Cruise had actually been developed as a piece during lockdown and owes a lot of its history and its mileage to the events of the last few years. And because of that, it has a very unique perspective on this historical pandemic as seen through the lens of the more recent one. The current one, essentially. It's still happening. So even though I saw Cruise when it first opened in the West End last year with its original run, and I did a written review for that, I've never actually spoken about it on my channel. But if you do want to go and read that review, you can find it on my blog, mickeyjoetheatre.co.uk. And if you want to make sure you have access to all my written reviews, as well as the video ones from now on, you can sign up to showscore.com by clicking the link in the description or the pinned comment down below. And that will give you an account on ShowScore. You will automatically be following me and my writer page. You will see all of the reviews that I have written for myself or for other publications, and you'll be able to write reviews of your own. Now, let me tell you exactly why I enjoyed Cruise so much in the West End. So this is easily a 5-star production of a 5-star play for me. I think the writing is incredible. It's immersive. It's this marathon of a piece of storytelling. It clocks in at 1 hour and 40 minutes without an interval. It is 100 intense minutes of theatre performed by its writer, Jack Holden. It transports you to Soho in its heyday so effectively, so viscerally, and so joyously. It's fascinating how a play set during such traumatizing and devastating years can be filled with this much joy and can even find joy in its final moments. You know, a lot of shows that deal with these kinds of growing trauma where you have the AIDS crisis as something that's looming in the background, which is a factor in a great many theatre productions, plays and musicals. Usually it's something that just grows more and more. With Cruise, it has this very specific trajectory where it sort of crests the worst of its trauma in the middle, and then it's able to find levity on the other side. As much as it's about going through that and paying tribute to that and a testimony of that time and its impact and its realities, it is also about enduring it and those who survived and how they were able to carry on in the wake of its devastation. Which is not something that every show about the AIDS crisis gives us. Not every piece of theatre takes us through the other side and past the worst of it, and I appreciate that about this show. The other thing I really like specifically about this production is it could so easily be about its 1980s story, but there's at least 10 minutes at the start that frames it in a very interesting way, with a younger Jack Holden in this sort of autobiographical moment that explains how he got the idea for writing this piece when he was receiving calls as a volunteer for Switchboard, the LGBT plus charity hotline. And this not only grounds it in this sincerity and this realism and explains to us as the audience why he has this connection to this story and lets us know that there is this layer of truth in all of it, but it also, rather than it just being this retrospective piece about Soho in the 80s, it frames it as this conversation between then and now. It's this intergenerational idea of the modern gay community learning from its elders and having a respect for that culture and for the things that have been endured. In many ways, it bears a lot of similarities to The Inheritance, because that is all about that sort of intergenerational culture and respect and understanding. So obviously, this is a one-man show for the most part. I will explain more about that in just a moment, but Jack Holden gives the very central performance here. And it's hard enough playing two sides of one conversation when you are multi-rolling as all of these different personalities within a one-person show that contains multiple characters. But some of the particularly intense conversations and debates that he has in this show, to be able to play both sides of those is just so impressive given the level of trauma that it has with it. It's the amount of humour that he's able to infuse into his performance and into his writing for a show that is incredibly heavy in its themes. It's how much levity he can inject into all of that I find particularly impressive. I mean, gram for gram, minute for minute in this show, there is more levity and humour and optimism and joy than there is depression and sadness and trauma and heavier moments and heavier material. Something particularly special about this show is the way that it uses music and the way it talks about music and the music of this era and how important it was to the identity of its central character and how much it came to represent the world around him and how embedded it is and how irrevocably attached it is to his memories of that time and his emotions at that time. The way it talks about music in the script is just beautiful, and none of that would be as evocative as it is in the theatrical version if it was not for the actual music that is used. It is composed and performed live on stage by John Patrick Elliott. There is live musicianship, he plays instruments, he sings, he is doing DJ stuff up the top that I do not even understand, but the music that's created is so consistently atmospheric and plays a big part, I think, in making the tone as slick as it is, in making it all just so watchable and so engaging, in making 100 minutes feel like maybe 50. This was one of my biggest takeaways about the show, in fact, is I've just come from the Edinburgh Fringe where I've seen so many one-person shows that were shorter than this and felt twice as long. This is so engaging and dynamic and changes its pace a lot. That has to do with the amazing writing, the amazing performances, but also the direction from Brona Lagan, whose name I am surely mispronouncing, and I'm very sorry in advance. But I did think the direction on this was fantastic, so hopefully that makes up for it. It's hand in hand with a very clever set design by Nick Correll that enables so much variety of location and these changes of pace that help it move along and feel like different scenes and different characters rather than just one person talking at you consistently. As a counterpoint, I saw a one-person play at the Edinburgh Fringe a few days ago that was just one person sat on the one set the entire time, and that dragged for the opposite reason. Jack Holden basically has this playground of neon and scaffolding and stairs and a rotation in the center and like monkey bars to swing on and tassels coming down, and all of that makes for fantastic opportunities and creates some really visually striking moments. I also want to talk about Jack's singing before I forget. I have no idea if he has much of a musical theatre background, but he is a fantastic singer. I would love to see him performing in musical theatre roles as well as all of the other acting that he is doing. Without spoiling too many of the sections of this show for you, there's some really great moments. There's some fun moments as well as the more hard-hitting stuff. A lot of the musical performances are very fun. There's a section where Jack Holden gets to play a drag queen. Essentially, it gives you this very broad overview of what was gay nightlife culture at the time. So we see a lot of different perspectives on that and a lot of varieties on that. It's as educational as it is informative. I've only really learned about Polari, this sort of underground gay culture language, since seeing the first production. So that's something I now noticed this time around and thought, oh, that's where the Polari is being referenced. I hadn't noticed that the first time because I hadn't learned as much about it. But there is drag, there is clubbing, there is the importance of music, there is this sort of party culture and party drug culture and cottaging and all of these other things and various relics of the 80s bygone gay era and some things that are very much still prevalent. It's very interesting, and it would be fascinating for anyone who had lived through that era, I am sure. This brings me to my next point in who should go and see this production. I think it speaks to gay men of all ages and everyone within the umbrella of the LGBTQ+ community. It's a really important queer story, but I think anyone who was involved in that scene in the 80s absolutely owes it to themselves to go and see this show. I think the level of nostalgia that it will provide, hopefully in a very authentic way, would be amazing. It talks about so many venues and memorable scenes. Some of the locations it talks about are still accessible in London, so there's some that I'm familiar with, but I imagine if you were local to Soho at the time, there will be just so many things that you will recognise from this script. I had a message on Instagram after I saw this show and someone said that they had gone there on a first date. Now, I have thoughts about going to the theatre on a first date because I think on a first date it's important that you have a lot of open communication and you don't want anything that really steps in the way of that. And so I think going to the theatre where you're going to be sat in silence for 100 minutes next to each other is potentially a strange vibe. It's also kind of an intense show, but if this is something that's important to you, I think it's a good date concept. Maybe not the first date, but the people behind me appeared to be on a date. I couldn't tell if it was a first date. It seemed early, I will say. And now I'm just outing them on the internet. I hope you had a good time. I hope you guys can make it work. But I think date night theatre is a concept that I can very much get behind, and I think this is a great show to go to with someone that you're slightly more seriously dating, and it just creates so many great talking points, not only about all of the stuff that is featured in the play, but about the importance to you of gay culture and gay history, and I think that can ignite a really interesting conversation. But also, you don't have to be gay to go and see this play. The same way it talks a lot about queer music in the 80s, you don't have to be gay to have enjoyed that music, because people did and they weren't. There is so much about this show that is universal, the way it talks about love and joy and freedom and mortality. These are all universal themes that anyone can go and see, and everyone should go and see this fantastic performance. Do be aware that the content is slightly more adult with some of the things it talks about. As a general sort of a content and trigger warning, it is not as emotionally triggering or devastating as It's a Sin, the Russell T Davies TV show, but it definitely deals with a lot of similar themes. So I would use that as a kind of a barometer of what you feel you have the emotional capacity for. Equally, if It's a Sin was something you enjoyed, then you should definitely go and see this show. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed my review of Cruise at the Apollo Theatre. If you've already seen this production or you saw it in a previous version or you're going to see it soon, let me know your thoughts and feelings down in the comments section. And if you would like to review this production for yourself, remember you can go to showscore.com, sign up with the link below and go and write your own review and then send it to me afterwards because I would love to read what you thought. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to subscribe to my Stagey YouTube channel for plenty more content coming very soon. If you haven't noticed, I am posting so many videos at the moment because I'm seeing so many shows and I'm trying to stay on top of all of the content and give you a nice stagey end to the summer. If you would like, you can give me a super thanks down below. That really helps me as a content creator, or you can go to patreon.com/MickeyJoeTheatre, where you can support me as a content creator and gain access to some exclusive photo and video content. I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day.
For 10 more seconds, I'm Mickey Joe Theatre. Oh my god, hey, thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!